Welcome to the Roadmap to Secure Love. Today, Kim and Kyle explore the keys to thriving relationships, setting boundaries, finding resilience, and embracing the grief that comes with growth. Ready to create space for healthier connections? Let's dive in.
Well, welcome to 2025. We're excited to start this new year with all of you listeners and people who are watching our videos. What we want to spend time talking about today is actually reflecting on 2024 and the things we've been doing that have been serving us or helping us, even if they're hard. And Kim wants to start and talk about one of the things she's been really working on in 2024 that she wants to continue in 2025.
Yeah, we always are talking about what's the next thing, right? Like what to work on. And a lot of times we don't slow down and kind of process what we did well.
Mhm.
So that this is the space for that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've really been working on, you would think like she's a therapist, she should have always been doing this, but it's a learning time, right? And it is using my voice, right? And there are people in my life who, when I start using my voice and start setting boundaries or saying what I like and what I don't like, instead of withdrawing, they're celebratory, right? They're like, yay, Kim, finally, thank you
Mhm.
for telling us how you feel. And then there are other people I really, really, really cared about that I started using my voice and they're like, I'm done. I don't want to be your friend anymore. And Kyle, there's grief.
There is.
There is so much grief. And then I had to kind of war in 2024. It's like using my voice actually is the healthy thing.
Mhm.
It makes me feel good. And those that don't want to hear it, who I really, really, people I love
Mhm.
have said, I'm out. I don't want this new Kim.
Mhm.
I like the Kim that was just the yes woman.
Mhm.
And to let go of that grief, loneliness, sadness. But at the end of the day, why I want to hold on to this is that I realize that that is being a secure self. It's not making myself smaller, actually taking up the space in the world, having my view, and knowing that the people that are staying with me are the people that are my rides or dies, right?
Mhm.
People that are left, even though I'm grieving or I grieved, I am strong enough to tolerate that.
Mhm.
I am worthy of wanting healthy relationships. I am worthy of not always being the one who listens, but also the one who gets listened to. And so that is one of the things I want to continue. Even though it's hard,
Mhm.
having a secure self says to me, Kim, you've got this. And you just made space by letting go of those people. You just made space for healthier relationships to enter into your life.
Yeah, I think that what you're really pointing to is it's hard, right? Making these changes to honor yourself, to
Oh,
kind of keep your feet in the ground of I'm gonna have a voice, I'm gonna make space for myself. Whereas in the past, there's been patterns where some of those relationships, it's been better serving for that pattern to not have that and have the other person who cut off from you when you started to have a voice or started to change your part in that dance that pattern worked for them. But as soon as you started to do something different that made you feel healthier, more secure for yourself, made you take up space for yourself, they cut you out because the system wasn't benefiting them in the way that they wanted. And even though that is devastatingly painful to lose people you care about, it also makes space for those people who celebrate your growth and can tolerate the changes you make and adapt with you.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I had to learn was it's okay to grieve. Like, don't fight it.
Mhm.
Like, allow the loneliness to be there, allow the thoughts to be there, share them with people around you to get support.
Mhm.
And what I found is that actually that loneliness and that sadness started to not be so strong. And I actually felt the most freedom.
How did you tolerate that? Because that's a tough place. That when we start to make those changes, we start to advocate for ourselves, and we lose a relationship that's important to us. Sometimes that puts us in this place of, oh, am I doing it wrong? Do I actually deserve this? We start to really question that and sometimes go back to old behaviors that worked for that relationship or that pattern. And how did you tolerate that loneliness? Kind of what did you do to find that security within yourself to be able to do that?
So I am the type of person, my husband is not, but I am the type of person that needs to talk about the same thing 1,000 times, the same exact thing. And just to have people to be like, yep, you're good, you're good, you're good. So I reached out to my community to be like, this is what happened. This is where I'm struggling. I reached out to my therapist, you know, and I had those people be like, yep, you're right. Yep, that was good of you. Yep. And not just the people that are going to be the yes people, right? The people that, like you, Kyle, the people who could be the yes people, but also love me enough to say, and that wasn't that great, right? And I know that they're for me,
Mhm.
right? So I found those people.
What you're really pointing to is you have these people in your life who are your secure network, right? That when things get turbulent, when things get hard, when things get confusing, that you can turn to them with vulnerability and you know they're not just going to appease you. They're going to validate you, they're going to comfort you, but they might also call you into looking at something that might be something you have to do differently too.
Right.
And that's one of the things that's really huge is when we do something we change, having people around us who want to celebrate that growth, who want to honor us, and sometimes even share some crunchy things that might make us grow a little bit more. That is a major way to help us internalize that security, tolerate that growth, because we have the human connection and authenticity in that vulnerability that allows us to grow naturally, which is actually how the whole attachment system is designed. When we have a secure connection, it creates space for growth.
Yeah. The other thing I did, which is I journaled and I wrote letters. I wrote letters that I never mailed to these people.
Mhm.
And as I got it out of my system and I reflected on how I did things in the past that were hard, and I survived and I thrived,
Mhm.
I was able to also tolerate what was happening. So I'm the type of person, if I hold it in, it's gonna crush me,
Mhm.
right? So I put it out, talk to people I that would call me out and support me, and I wrote letters
Mhm.
and I added to the letters and I changed the letters, never mailed them, right? And I began to think of things that I've done in the past that were hard, that caused grief. But when I tolerated them, I'm a better person for it.
Mhm.
So I pulled on my resilience story, right? And all of us have them
Right.
where life has been hard and we've made it.
Mhm.
Have a resilient story. And I think it's important to pull from those and to be like, actually, I am cooler than what I give myself credit for and stronger.
Which is such a secure message, right? Because it tells ourselves that we're deserving of this struggle and we can get through it. And that is very different than, oh, I'm not deserving of it. Let me get through this. Let me get out of this. Go back to the old behaviors. Being able to remind ourselves of our resilience and our strength allows us to stay in these hard things and grow and really get to a place of change. And one of the things I love you talking about writing the letter or talking to other people is instead of it being bottled up on the inside and unintentionally leaking out in other ways, which we know is what happens, you get to intentionally let it out and have conversation with people or have these letters, which is a conversation with an imagined other or that individual who really hurt you, who might not actually make space to see the new you, but you can make space in writing the letter to honor yourself in that writing that letter to that person, and you never mail it. But at least you get to have a voice, and that's you prioritizing yourself enough to make time and space to actually write that letter.
Yeah. I think we get in trouble when we just put it in like a box and we don't identify it,
Oh, yeah.
right? But as long as we say high grief,
Hmm.
high hard thing, high disappointment,
Hmm.
I'm going to confront you.
Hmm.
I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to write about you. I'm going to talk about you.
Hmm.
It becomes less of a force.
Yeah. When you name it and tame it, you can change it.
That's right. What you can name, you can tame, and it changes it. That's
Mhm.
right.
I think it's really powerful. Like even something I did this last year is I wrote letters to people from 10 years ago,
Mm,
right? Where there was still a lot of pain that I had been carrying around and anger about how I was treated in some of those relationships. And I was able to voice, right? I cut those people off because they weren't safe people for me, but I was able to have a voice of what was so upsetting and what was so hurtful and also grieve kind of what I went through. And that made the load from that pain so much lighter. And it's not something I carry around anymore because it's outside of me now. And it's on that piece of paper that it gets to stay there rather than inside my body.
yeah. So it's freeing.
Very freeing.
Mhm. Yeah. So something you would like to also continue in 2025.
Absolutely. And I think this comes back to that other thing you're saying, in that there is space for that grief, right? There's grief for the relationships and how I showed up in those relationships that weren't healthy for me. There's grief in losing some of those connections because that relationship wasn't healthy, right? And even though I cut them off years ago, there was still some of that grief of like, oh, that really sucked. That
Yeah.
was really painful.
Yeah. And there was even grief for me about behaviors that I participated in that did not align
Mhm.
with who I am as a human that I allowed to occur.
Right,
I allowed that,
right.
right? So that was something that I had to kind of sit with and be like, okay, can I forgive myself
Mhm.
too?
Which I think is such an important part is about a secure self. Is being able to look at our behaviors where we did betray ourselves, where we didn't show up for ourselves, which is part of why I wrote those letters from 10 years ago. Is there's still part of me that was angry with the way I didn't voice what bothered me or the way I participated in some unhealthy dynamics, was being able to write that letter even to myself of like, okay, younger you, I can see why you were struggling. I can see why you were stuck in that, and offer some of the compassion to that younger self and be able to forgive that younger self for those behaviors so that I didn't have to carry that moving forward.
Right. Isn't it powerful?
Well, I think that's a lot of us think about forgiveness one with another person and that we have to give it to the person, but sometimes forgiveness is really just for ourselves, right? I didn't send that letter to show the other person that I forgave them. I did that only for me. The letter I wrote for myself was to forgive myself for the behaviors that betrayed who I was and what I needed.
Right.
And in that letter, I got to also see the growth that I'm not doing that now and how I am honoring myself, how I am protecting myself. So that was another thing that was also really important to see is, oh, look at how I have been resilient. Look at how I have grown. Look at how I'm using the growth I have today to help heal these younger parts of me that didn't know how to deal with some of these harder things.
I'm proud of your growth.
Nah, me too.
Yeah. It feels good.
It does. It feels healthy. It's hard, it's crunchy, and it feels so healthy to be able to take up space and
Yeah.
to honor ourselves.
Yeah. And I was a chaplain at a VA for several years and watched a lot of people pass away, right? And at the end, most people, what's important is those powerful relationships, right? That meant the world to them, that was life-giving.
Mhm.
And those are the things I want to foster. Things that are unhealthy, things that don't honor who I am, things that don't respect my boundaries. It's okay for me to let those go.
And I think what you just said right there is so powerful for so many people, right? It's been powerful for me. It's okay to let that relationship change, to let it go a little bit, to not be pursuing, not trying to make it something that I want it to be and the other person isn't wanting to also make it be, but to realize that I will survive and I'll be okay. And I can find the more meaningful connections with people who also want that type of relationship with me.
Yes. Yes. You just cleaned out a whole bunch of space.
Mhm.
You put all of that effort, or I put all of that effort into this bad relationship or unhealthy relationship. Now that that's gone, I have all of this space
Mhm.
to explore new things. Now, at first, all of that space felt lonely, right? So you grieve that.
Mhm.
But then you realize how resilient you are, and you begin to go like, oh yeah, I have space. What now do I, Kim, want to do?
Mhm.
How do I want to fill this space that makes me happy?
Makes my life worth living, makes my life enjoyable.
Yes. Yep.
I love it. So I think in summary, as we kind of wrap up here, is reflect in 2024 the things that you did that were different. Reflect on the ways that you were resilient and make space for any grief that might come up from those changes and connect with yourself. So that way in 2025, you continue to grow and become more and more resilient and more secure within yourself.
You're worth it.
Today's key takeaways include 1. Use your voice with courage. 2. Build resilience through support. 3. Let go of toxic ties. 4. Embrace grief to grow. And 5. Create space for healthy relationships that support the healthiest you. Follow the roadmap to secure love on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Sign up for the Secure Attachment Path course to learn practical tools for building secure connections. Link in the show notes. Until next time, stay connected and keep listening with love.